So firstly, thank you very much everyone for joining us today on our webinar. The webinar is Kickstart Your Website and Building a Maturity Journey for Your Site. There is a lot to consider when you evaluate your current website and look to make enhancements, or if you're actually starting from the beginning and are about to build a new website. As we all know, websites have different goals for businesses, but at the end of the day, the website needs to meet those goals and objectives, whether it's to actually help your business generate revenue, engage with your customers, build your brand, or provide users company and product information. The list can go on, but I'm not going to go through the whole list, but that was just to name a few of them. Our webinar today will help to ensure the success of your next website project. Now, before we do get started, if there are any questions throughout the webinar, on the right-hand side is the GoToWebinar panel. Please type your questions over there. For those that do have the audio working, please, if you could rather just type the questions on the side so we can monitor those and answer as many as possible, that would be much appreciated. Now, to kick us off, and before we do actually start the webinar, we wanted to get an understanding of really where everyone is at the moment with regard to their website journey and how they're actually progressing along managing their website. So we're going to be putting a poll up on the page. And the poll we've got over there is, when did you last reevaluate your site? In the last 6 months, 6 to 12 months ago, more than 12 months ago, and never, or maybe you're too embarrassed to actually answer how long it's been since you did last update your site over there. Okay, we're going to close off this poll. And I will share the results there for you because there are some interesting results that we do have. So we're going to share some of those results, as you can see there. And very interesting to see that we do have quite an engaged audience, which is fantastic. It means it'll be very relevant to you. 48% have last reevaluated their sites in the last 6 months, 24% 6 to 12 months ago, 21% more than 12 months ago, and 7% seems like quite a while since they've looked at reevaluating their site. So a very interesting result over there, and appreciate everybody for submitting your answers to the poll over there. So to set the stage for today's webinar, I wanted to run you through the website maturity model. This will help you identify where you are now, and will also give you an idea of where you can go from here and how your website and web strategy can mature. On both axes over there, you can see we have the maturity level and the productivity of the website. I'm not going to go through all of these in detail, as that is a whole discussion on its own, but I am going to give you a very quick overview about each of these 5 steps that we have in the website maturity model. The first stage over there is basic. And to those that fall into the basic stage of the maturity model, those are typically people that have a website, and it's probably there just to give them a presence and provide basic information about their products and services. These sites might have some basic analytics in them, if any, and maybe a few online forms so people can contact them and subscribe to a mailing list, for example. Those sites are typically driven by the IT department at the moment. The tactical stage, and as you mature into the tactical stage, you'd have a website or web strategy that starts to see additional features added, such as getting additional information from your users and providing them with something in return, whether they are downloading a brochure or a white paper or a product fact sheet. This starts to lead down a path of the basics of lead generation. Tactical stage sites may be mobile friendly. They might have some workflows implemented as well. And again, these sites are typically managed by IT, with marketing starting to influence by requesting the lead generation. When users mature to the demand generating stage, this is where there's the multi-channel approach to the website and the digital strategy. And this is where there's the goal of attracting prospects to the website through a range of activities such as content marketing, SEO, and SEM. This is where we start to see richer content created, more advanced analytics, and the beginning of integration with external applications such as Salesforce, Marketo, Sugar CRM, Campaign Monitor, and others. At this stage, marketing is really starting to manage the website. The fourth stage over there is the automated and integrated stage. And that's where marketing is now managing a lot more of the website or owning the web strategy while they're closely supported by IT. There's a much bigger emphasis and focus on nurturing the prospects and customers to increase lead quality, conversion rate, and revenue. Some key characteristics we see include multi-site management, multilingual site management, and advanced analytics that are linked to revenue and specific goals, as well as tighter integration to other business systems. And then as the user moves to the fifth stage, which is the engaging stage of the website maturity model, that's where there's a framework that's implemented and tools implemented to achieve specific business objectives by leveraging all the different online channels. And this is where you're able to engage with your target market in a one-to-one way by providing personalized and relevant information. This also means that your users have that personalized customer experience throughout all the different sites they land on, because you've got tight integration to CRM systems, marketing automation tools, as well as social platforms. Now, for the customers that are at this stage, we typically see marketing driving the project and working very closely with IT as well as the executive leadership to provide their support. Underpinning all of this is a web content management system that grows as your needs and capabilities do. So here's our expert panel we have today, and I just wanted to introduce you to who's going to be running through the content, fantastic content we have today. We've got Tim Kirkman, Solution Architect, and we've got Brian Pogo, Project Manager here at Elcom.
Good morning. Hello.
Both Tim and Brian have significant experience working with clients from multinationals to SMB clients as well. So no matter where your business sits in the scale, there's some great expertise and insights that both Tim and Brian will have for you today. The agenda for the webinar today will cover these four main points: evaluating your current content management system, assessing your content strategy, improving your mobile presence, and integrating with other business systems. So let's start with the first one, evaluating your content management system. Some of the big questions are, how do you know what to look out for if you're trying to move to the next level in the maturity model? How do you evaluate your content management system? And more importantly, where do you actually start? So Brian, when we look at the maturity model for websites, we can see that most of us might say we've achieved one or two elements from each of these different stages, and there's probably a few different areas where we aspire to go to. In the poll we ran earlier, we saw a lot of people have reevaluated their website in the last 6 months, and I'm sure they set themselves a roadmap to grow and move through the maturity model over there. And if they didn't, hopefully we've started that thought process over there. But I was just wondering, could you give us a bit of an idea on some of the key objectives that you've seen with projects over the last year that you've noticed with clients that everyone online today should really take into account?
Josh, I have a bit of an undertone for any kind of stage that you're in with the maturity module. You shouldn't bite off more than you can chew. And what I mean by that is sometimes we have a big picture and we know what we want to achieve, but that's not necessarily what the end user wants and what our clients need from our site. It's more of our own personal goals of what we want in a website. Really, the ideal cycle that you should be going through is learning and growing, understanding the functionality that you need for your end user. What is your end user going to be using the site for? And from that, you'll find that when you reach that end goal, your big picture is still there. It may have changed slightly, but it's changed for the better. It's changed for your end users. Now, some of the things that you need to think about going through the module, the model from beginning to end is a few of these things that go along the lines of, don't skip your content strategy. Understand the features and functionality that you're looking for. Understand what the business goals are. And then work backwards from there to see which is the right CMS for you. Focus on the outcomes. Now, I always use the analogy of, I don't know if you all remember those Fisher-Price toys. Where you've got the circle and the square has to go into the square in order to fit in. And that's really what you need to try and do, is fit everything in as it's meant to go. Don't force things to fit when they're not meant to. Understand what you're capable of doing. Understand what your CMS is able to do. And from there, you can build on and work your way through the model. Test everything. You've got to break everything. It's just the name of the game. Have a test environment. Build it on a test environment. Test it on the test environment until you break it. Fix it. Test it again. Make sure that you're able to run through your process from beginning to end in some sort of staging environment before you move it to live. And when you move it to live, please don't do it on a Friday afternoon. And don't forget that there's communities out there. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel, and neither should you. Everything's really been done. It's just a matter of picking it up, dusting it off, and making it your own. And what I mean by that is that there's tons of ideas that you can gather from other people. Your own communities out there. I deal a lot with municipality councils. I deal a lot with schools. And they're talking to each other. They're giving advice from where they've made mistakes and where other people can build on. And not to mention from Elcom, we've got the reference site that people can log in on and get information from, as well as forums where other users can log in and talk to each other and learn from their mistakes and what they've done.
And following on from your testing point there, Brian, I'd like to add that you should be constantly experimenting with your website content, and it should be easy. Experiment with your text on your homepage. Which wording on your homepage creates more click-throughs, for instance? So testing doesn't just have to happen when you're looking at launching a new website. You test it, goes live, and that's it. But just continuously keep testing the content and the layouts and the images to try and just get the most out of the message that you're delivering.
Some really good points there, and I think, Brian, you mentioned some really key business considerations when actually evaluating the whole CMS strategy, and gives everyone a really good idea of where to actually start from that business perspective, and obviously as you start to launch different projects. Tim, can you actually tell us how this translates in terms of the technical functionality and capability?
Yeah, so when you're looking at evaluating your CMS, if you've already got one or if you're starting the process from scratch, it really starts with asking the question, if you have a CMS, does it have all the tools to do what you need it to do right now? The website maturity model can be a helpful guide, so highlighting what to focus on next. From there, it's really important to create some kind of a web strategy. And that's really all about asking questions like, what are my drivers and goals? Why am I creating this website, or why am I maintaining it? Is it lead generation that you're after? Is it to increase sales? Is it to grow my community? And then from there, once you've established that and defined that, ask the question again, does your CMS have the capability to meet those goals? I find often that just creating a simple checklist can be really helpful. So start by asking, what are the current challenges and functional needs that you might have? Is it around dynamic content? Is it around capturing information in online forms? Do you need to improve your lead generation? Is performance a really important factor to you? Mobility, access on mobile device. So take performance, for instance. So CMS websites usually are great at bringing dynamic content onto your web pages and the ability to author content easily. However, this usually comes at the cost of performance. So Elcom CMS is introducing some really great performance optimizations in our next release around caching content and allowing content to load on demand once the page is actually visible for the user.
Tim, you brought up something quite interesting then. We touched on it a little while ago, that sometimes you need a plan. Whatever you do, you need to have a plan ready to go so that you know what you're trying to achieve. And I think sometimes when words can scare us, and when we say create a strategy, we're not necessarily just saying, sit down there, create a war room, and put a 1,000-page document together. We're just asking for a basic plan of just what you need to achieve and how you're going to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some very good takeaways there for the audience, and I think with these points in mind, I'd love to see how this actually translates to our audience that we have today. So I'm going to put up another poll there, and if everyone could please jump and vote on that poll over there, which is, does your current content management system functionality meet your current and future needs? If you could please vote. There are 3 options over there, yes, no, and mostly. And I think based on what Brian and Tim have just run through, it should definitely start getting your creative minds going and starting to think, what are the goals, what are you trying to achieve, and is your current platform actually helping you meet those needs? So I'll give everyone about 10 seconds or so to vote, and then we'll close off the poll. All right, I'm going to close off the poll there. Some interesting results. And I will share those just so you can actually see those results there. So some interesting statistics to look at. As you can see, yes was only 13%, no 39%, and mostly 48%. So, just having a look at this very quickly, I can see there's a lot of people there that obviously have these great ideas of where they want to go and what they want to do. And for some people, their platform does meet their needs. But there seems like a lot of people where it either doesn't meet their needs or it mostly meets their needs. So maybe they either haven't actually thought about going to the next stage, or they are thinking about going to the next stage, but they haven't got to the stage of working out, is the platform actually going to meet those needs as they grow? So interesting points over there, and thank you very much, everyone, for voting on that. Now, we won't spend too much time on the next section, which is content strategy, as Brian and Tim have really spoken about the importance of this already when you're actually selecting a CMS and evaluating your CMS. And I think most of you are probably more interested in actually how do you store, present, and promote the content through the design and the navigation. But Tim, maybe it is worth highlighting here some of the key features of the CMS that might ease the burden for marketers in the world of content marketing, lead generation, demand generation, and other activities designed to actually drive revenue.
Yeah, look, we touched on the concept of content strategy just previously there, and really it's important to understand that your content on your website directly impacts three key areas. It impacts your search engine performance. It has a big impact on your user experience and engagement levels, and it also impacts the level of accessibility that people have to your site. So I just want to highlight the importance of having a content strategy. It should be constantly evolving with your requirements. It's something that you need to look at the content on your site and ask yourself, is it meeting where I want to take my website? And its goal should be really to constantly improve those three impact points that are listed there up on the screen. So maybe asking some questions about your website and your CMS is a good idea. Does it provide you with the ability to do search engine optimization tuning? Can you share content and reuse it across your site and other sites that you might have? Does it give you the tools to engage with your users, such as polls and surveys, ratings, and being able to favorite content? Does it allow you to be able to drop social sharing options onto your page? So when it comes to content strategy, it's not something that you need to draft a 20-page document about. It's really just understanding the impacts that your content has on your site.
I think, as you've mentioned, really engagement is key. Brian, are you seeing a greater focus of clients wanting to create that two-way conversation with their prospects?
I'm noticing that a lot of clients are turning, obviously, to social elements on their site, whether it be a share this or a comment here. I just think that it's important that before you start dropping these buzzwords onto your site, if Facebook's the new thing or if Instagram's the new thing, you want to throw the link on there, which you do. You need to be kept up to date and you need to be up with the trends. But having said that, though, I was reading an article just the other day that teens are starting to drop off of Facebook. Now, if that's your demographic that you're aiming towards, then you need to find what the new social network or the new social app that age group is using on your site, and you should really keep up to date with that.
Great points. And as we sort of move on to the next part of this content strategy discussion, a big question that everyone will be asking is, what should website navigation do? And we wanted to re-show this content map we showed a few slides ago, which was developed by an agency partner of ours, as content strategy is really something that flows through the whole project. Brian, what should a website navigation actually do?
This is, again, my underlying tone of keep it simple. When you arrive at a page, you don't want to get lost. You want to be able to find what you're looking for, get the information that you need, and move on with your day. We're fast-paced. We keep moving. And the idea of that is to enable users to choose from a small selection of pages to visit. And what I mean by that is no one wants a massive menu structure where you're going to be diving down deep to find content and then get lost. You need to be able to maybe create a small top-level menu, and then as you start diving down, you work on second-level navigation or perhaps a different way of navigating to pull that content up to the surface. Provide clear labels for pages where navigation tabs take you. Adapt your website to match users' needs. Again, understand what your users want. It's all very well, all the different areas of your business want to throw their information to surface to the top. And you want that important information there, but perhaps it's not important to the user. It's not as important to the user as you think. So try and get that information from your end user. Tell people where they are currently and how to get back. Very important. No one likes to get lost in a website. But probably the most important is to have some sort of search function. If ever I'm lost on any site or after a few seconds of not being able to find what I'm looking for, if there's a search field at the top of the screen, I'll jump into it, type in a few keywords, and those search terms will be on the top three search results, and I've found what I'm looking for.
And I really agree with you on all those points, but definitely that search point you made over there where people just want to find information as quickly and easily as possible, and they want to know exactly the logical place where the search bar will be and how they quickly find whatever info it is and the reason why they've actually come to your site. Tim, what are your thoughts on website navigation considerations?
Yeah, the important thing to remember about your navigation as well is that it really provides the path to your content, both for your visitors but also for search engines. So it needs to be easily constructed so that search engines can easily navigate through it as well. And also keep in mind that there's other ways that people will navigate through your site. We've mentioned searching is important. Have a look at tagging content so it will be surfaced where it needs to be. Displaying breadcrumbs is a great concept that you can use at the top of your page. It really is a good way of showing a visitor exactly where they are in your site if they were to just land on a particular page. And also consider keeping a sitemap up to date. It helps users understand the scope of your website, but also helps search engines to understand how to find the content within your site. One tip that I could probably give is maybe just ask somebody to find something specific on your site. And this will really help you identify if there's any navigational pain points that exist. If you do find that the outcome, the flip side to the whole search argument is if you do find that the only way somebody can find something on your site is to Google search it, then you may really need to think hard about your navigational structure. So I guess, Brian, quickly, what would you be recommending to a client as next steps if this was the case, if the outcome of investigating that their navigation was that the only way you can find something is by Google searching it?
I always like to take that step back, open up a blank Excel document, and just write down the bare basics of your site. If you find you're getting stuck there, and you're running a project with Elcom, we're more than happy to help you out and guide you in that way. But really, just keep it simple. Throw it into Excel, break down all your different levels, and see where you're making those changes. Keep in mind, though, that when you're making those changes to your structure, keep in mind about your SEO. You don't want to lose that Google juice by moving it around. And if you are moving them around, remember your 301 redirects.
Excellent. Good points there about the SEO friendliness once you are actually making some changes over there. Now, we all know that making your site mobile friendly is no longer an option anymore, but rather that's a mandatory requirement, sort of like the thinking mobile first and one of the first considerations. So we're going to be discussing a bit about mobile, the implications, how you make your site mobile friendly, and the fact that if it's not mobile friendly, better hurry up and make it mobile friendly now. So before we do start that though, I did want to run the final poll we will be running for our webinar today, which is up on the screen. And the question we have there is, are all your sites internal and external mobile device friendly? So if everyone could please vote there, the three options we have is yes, yes for external but no for internal. So if you have internal sites such as intranet, or no, meaning none of them are mobile friendly. So we'll just let everyone quickly vote on these. Give you about another 10 seconds to quickly vote. I've got some interesting results over here. Alrighty. Still getting those final votes coming in over there? Okay, fantastic. We're going to close off the votes right now, and I'll be sharing those with you so you can see them. So some interesting results over here, given obviously the importance in mobile friendliness. In terms of how many people have all their sites mobile friendly, that's only 13%. For the external sites, but not the internal sites, that's 28%. And the vast majority of the people on the webinar today that do not have their sites mobile friendly is 59%. And so for the 59% people over here, I think there's going to be some really interesting tips over here of how you can actually get your site mobile friendly and the different approaches and what you need to consider. So some really interesting points to take note of over there. So thank you very much, everyone, for voting on that one. So now that we're talking a little bit more about it, Tim, what are some additional considerations on making your site mobile friendly?
Yeah, look, just to comment on that poll, it's interesting to see those stats because as the stats go globally, it's looking like this year will be the year that mobile browsing will really overtake desktop browsing. So mobile readiness is really no longer an optional luxury. But of course, the big question is, where do you start? Firstly, I'd recommend getting some stats on how people are using mobile devices on your site today. Is it in the morning on the train, on their phones? Or is it at night in front of their TV on their tablets? What are they looking for? Where are they landing? This will then provide you with a direction on where to actually focus your mobile strategy. So look, let's take a simple example, a restaurant. Look, you might find that you need to promote your location with a big map for easy access as they're driving down the road trying to find your location. A big phone number for easy dialing so that they can book an order. A mobile-friendly menu, again, so that when they're on the road, they can easily see what you've got to offer. More so than, say, really other important content, but not so important when it comes to mobile strategy, like the bio on your head chef or where your ingredients are sourced from. Important information, but maybe not to your mobile audience. So it really helps to understand that mobile-friendly and what it means before thinking about how it actually applies to your website. So to explain this further, Brian, do you want to explain some common characteristics of a mobile-friendly website?
You know, I always think to myself, how much time we spend on our phones. I mean, how long has it been since you didn't pick up your phone? We're always constantly on our phone, and like you mentioned, on public transport. No one talks to each other. We're all just looking at our phone, gathering information.
I'm on it right now.
And I think that there's some key elements that we learn doing our own surfing of what we don't want on our own site. Like you mentioned, navigation, speed, performance on a mobile site is important. How you display your images, how that functionality linking up with back-end databases or integration. You mentioned restaurants, and I always think to myself that there's a pizza restaurant down the road from me, and it's probably walking distance. But I always pick up my phone to see if they're open or not. And when I jump onto their website, it needs to work with one finger. And I'm scrolling through with one finger, and I see the telephone number, and I tap on the telephone number, and it does automatically dials on my mobile phone. There's no thinking. I don't have to go and remember the number and then rekey it in. Sometimes there's a pizza restaurant maybe closed, and I need to go to another one. And to find that other one, you jump onto a website, and when it pops up with the address, you click on that address, and it opens up your map application, and I'm driving, I'm walking there, I'm finding where I need to go. These little things that we do every day, we should think about as users when implementing our own mobile strategy and creating our own mobile sites. So sometimes I like to take a step back and think to myself, what's not mobile friendly? What really, gets my back up against the wall when I'm on a mobile site? Viewing websites that require a lot of scrolling. My son's getting a lot fitter now that I have a touch screen, but things you need to think about. Those call to actions. Am I hitting the telephone number? Is it dialing? If I'm clicking on an address, is it opening up my map application? Thinking backwards of things that aren't mobile friendly and may work for my site. And one that really, really kills me is when I open up a mobile site, or in this case it's not a mobile site, and I need to use two fingers in order to zoom in onto content. I just find nothing worse than having to zoom in onto something when it could just be in a mobile-friendly format that I'm just reading information, flicking by it, and moving on with my day.
Yeah, and look, I find it, to be honest with you, frustrating when I'm on Twitter on my phone and someone shared a link that I'm interested in. I click on it, and that link that I'm taken to is not mobile-friendly. I mean, usually my default reaction is just to jump straight back to Twitter. So, if you are going to, share content, and it does start to go viral through social networks, that page that people are going to be sharing and people are going to be landing on, in this day and age, it's really important to make sure that it's going to show up on people's phones in a nice, readable format.
And before we do move on to our final agenda point, I did want to just mention one other point around the mobile discussion we've had here, because based on our poll, it's very, very important, considering a lot of people are looking at making things mobile-friendly, making their websites mobile-friendly. And I think Brian and Tim have both given some really good points to consider over there. We do have a white paper that's available on our website. You'll see over there when you get the slides, you can actually click through the link, but it is available on the elcomcms.com website. Now, moving on to the final agenda point of this Kickstart Your Website, and I think one of the real important points is to make sure that so integration into third-party systems is considered. We spoke about it with the website maturity model, and so it's really important that we do actually discuss, what does this all mean, whether you're in the demand-generating stage, the automated integrated stage, or the engaging stage. What does it mean? Why should you integrate, and how do you actually do it? And most importantly, I guess, what are some of the benefits? So, Tim, do you want to maybe run us through a few of those?
Yeah, look, let's start with a definition. So I define integration as connecting your site with another product or service to leverage what they can provide. So a classic example of this are all those social sharing buttons that you see everywhere across the web. They integrate the social sharing capabilities of Facebook and Twitter into your site so that you in turn can leverage the viral nature of their networks. There are really two broad types of integrations. One is commoditized, and this is where you can look at leveraging a connector or a component within your CMS to achieve what you need. So Elcom CMS, for instance, has many integrations with products and services like Marketo and Salesforce, Campaign Monitor. We have the ability to allow users to authenticate using their Facebook and Twitter account. We have other connectors like Dropbox and SkyDrive and Google to surface documents that might be in other repositories. So explore the options that your CMS has that you can just leverage out of the box. The second option is to look at custom. Sometimes your business requirements might be such that you need to look at building something from the ground up to achieve your need. And sometimes this is required, but I'd just like to say some quick takeaways on this. Usually this is going to require custom development, and so that you might need to consider things like infrastructure and servers, security, performance impacts. These might be things that you may need to explore when looking at integrating with something, a third party, and then factor in the ongoing support and maintenance, as this is something that you're going to have to manage in the life cycle of your website. So just quickly, if you're looking at the website maturity model and you're thinking, okay, so what are my integration opportunities? Do I have any? Maybe I don't have any. I'd look at some third-party vendors and see what benefits they can provide to your website. So some three simple places to look. Consider analytical engines. If you're not getting stats out of your website around how people are interacting with your website, it's kind of like driving blind. You don't really know where you're going. You don't know where the bottlenecks are. So look at some analytic engines. Google Analytics is a classic one, but there's many other ones out there as well. There's some great customer support tools. Again, they're fairly simple to integrate into your website. You can bring live chat onto your site. You can bring ticketing support systems onto your site, literally usually just by dropping a couple of lines of code. And the last area to look at is social media tools. So just looking at ways that you can leverage those social media networks that are out there to start promoting your content or bringing content back into your site that's being shared on social media.
You know, Tim, it's funny that you mentioned the custom development, because more often than not, from a project perspective, is that first meeting I'll have with the client, I'll sit down and we'll go, all right, we need our CMS, and we also need to do some custom development working with our internal system X. And as time goes on, as the project develops, they finally see that what they were doing on this internal system can be easily achieved out the box using the Elcom CMS, and it's perhaps a better way of doing it or a different way of doing it. So perhaps an idea of when you're looking at doing that or moving into that stage of the model is to actually just take a step back and go, what am I doing now? What do I want to achieve?
Absolutely. Look at what you can do out of the box. It will reduce your maintenance costs. It will improve the speed to launch for your site because you're leveraging something out of the box. But for the argument of custom development, on the flip side of that, the benefit that brings is it might bring you a unique competitive advantage above what your clients and competitors are potentially doing. So, there's pros and cons for both approaches, but I guess, at the end of the day, it's about sitting down and asking, what do I really need out of whatever I'm trying to connect to?
And those are some really good points there when we actually do consider integration. And I think everyone over here, regardless of where you are in the website maturity model, can benefit from that and work out what's the next step and what should we do. Now, before we actually do wrap up and before we do give you the takeaways and go into Q&A for the webinar, I just want to jump back to one slide around mobile. I think I'm a little bit too excited to talk about integration that I skipped over this slide over here, which is from the mobile perspective, technically, how do you actually implement the mobile strategy? Tim, can you actually just explain how you go about actually implementing what we spoke about regarding mobile?
Yeah, from a high level, there's really two approaches, and they're, again, buzzwords that you might have heard. The first one is adaptive, and this is really where your server website detects the device that you're using and selects a specific layout and experience built just for that device. As compared to responsive, and this is where you build all the smarts into your existing website page so that it actually knows itself how to reformat based on the screen real estate that it has to use. So technically, a mobile-friendly website is one that brings together both capabilities of your CMS with a strong mobile layout and design. So from a design perspective, things to consider when building a website for mobile is things like there's no clicks. You don't use a mouse. Instead, people are touching the screen. People can swipe, including swipe with multiple fingers. So think about how you can leverage that enhanced interactivity. The size of people's fingers and the ability to hit a small location on the screen. So think about having less content on the page that's actually bigger in size so people can touch it easily. Also connectivity. Remember that your visitors may suddenly lose connection at any point in time. And from a CMS perspective, your CMS should be able to assist you in making delivery of your content for mobile. So your CMS should definitely be able to support both an adaptive and a responsive approach. It should be able to provide you with lighter web pages due to that limited bandwidth available on phones. And it should know how to adjust images and video to look and play on different devices natively.
You know, a lot of big clients, a lot of big companies out there, your Googles, your Facebooks, they're all still working on an adaptive mobile approach. And I think the new word out there being responsive, we'll want a responsive site. But really, again, and it's my undertone, is to take those steps back and see what do I want to achieve, what's the content on my site. You may not necessarily need a responsive site, but the content that you're trying to get across would work just as well in an adaptive design.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the flip side, if you've already got an existing site and you've invested a lot of time and effort into it today, and a responsive approach is a good way to get some really quick wins, because you can just drop those smarts into your existing pages and just do it in an incremental approach and just start to mobilize your existing site. So absolutely, there's no kind of adaptive responsive argument. It's really just taking the approach that works with where you're at in your web maturity stage.
So for the majority of people on the line who are definitely looking at making their sites mobile friendly, I think now you understand a bit about how you can do it, what's important, and from a technical perspective, how you actually turn that dream into the reality over there. So we're going to wrap up our webinar now with 5 key takeouts and some next steps, and we're also going to go into Q&A. So if anyone does have any questions, please jump to the questions box on the right-hand GoToWebinar panel, and please type your questions over there. And in the time we have, we'll do our best to answer as many of them as possible. So the 5 key takeouts that we've pulled out today for you to get going with straight away. There is a lot of content we've covered, and although you'll be receiving the recording of the webinar and the slides, we did want to highlight 5 key points here. The first is start with your content strategy. As we ran through during the webinar and the discussion by Tim and Brian, it really helps to understand what is your content strategy and how does that fit into what you're trying to actually achieve on the website maturity model. The second is to actually map out your website maturity journey into bite-sized projects. So go for the quick wins first to actually build momentum. Regardless of what stage you're actually in the website maturity model, there can be quite a lot of work to move from one stage to the other, or alternatively, it might just be a small amount of work to move from one stage to the other. But if you map out the journey and you set those small milestones, you can get the quick wins and start at least having that forward momentum to grow and mature and progress throughout the website maturity model. The third is to make sure your CMS has the capacity to grow with your maturity. So if you do have that understanding of what your actual journey is and what the goals of your website are, it can actually help you to understand what features and functionality do we need, what modules do we need to activate. Is there a module we have now that's going to help us achieve the next milestone, or do we need to add on additional modules so we can actually make that next leap? The fourth is integrating your website with other systems, and that's going to help you increase your site and employee productivity. It's going to help increase revenue, drive traffic, and help you meet those goals of your website, which is what we spoke about at the very beginning. And the fifth one is making your website mobile friendly. It really isn't an optional choice anymore. It's mandatory. It's a priority. And so regardless of where you are in the website maturity model, whether you're in the basic stage or in the engaging stage, you've got to make sure your website is actually mobile friendly. So what are some of the next steps? Well, two quick wins and next steps is firstly, take action today. Try to use at least one tip from the webinar we've run through there that Brian and Tim have been talking about, whether it's evaluating your content strategy, whether it's looking at how do we increase our lead generation, do we request additional information for a prospect to download a brochure, for example, whatever it might be, try actually implementing at least one of the many tips we've run through today. And the second is to chat to an expert here at Elcom for any help or guidance. We're happy to assist you and help you along that website maturity, growth, and model over there. Please also watch your inbox. There will be another webinar being announced shortly, so you'll be getting an email about that one very soon. So to wrap up our webinar, let's jump into a little bit of Q&A. If there's any questions, please type them in on the right-hand side. We probably only have time for one or two, but if there are any questions, please type them in the question box. If we don't actually get to answer your questions today, we will do our best to answer your questions immediately straight afterwards, and we'll be in touch with you to answer any questions. So first question we've got coming through here. We've got a question here from Peter, and this question I'm probably going to ask Brian and Tim. You can both chime in and answer this one over here, which is it okay to rethink your content strategy if you move from the demand generating stage to the automated integrated stage?
Yeah, I'd probably comment that you should always be evaluating your content strategy, not just when you're moving from stage to stage, but understand the impact that your content has over lots of different components like search engine optimization, and just constantly be asking the questions around what is your content doing for you. And as you move from stage to stage, your content will evolve, and what you can actually do with your content will evolve. You can start to look at personalizing content and introducing more dynamic content, but it should really be something that you should be constantly asking yourself, is it delivering the value it needs to?
And then I touched on it a little bit earlier during the presentation, but don't forget the Google juice. You can always move things around, and you can change your structure and build on it and grow, and hopefully it will, and so it should. That's what a content management system's for. But just remember the Google juice. Remember those redirects. Google needs to index certain pages, and if those pages move, they need to know where they've gone.
Great answers there, and I think really good understanding about that content strategy, that approach, and how you actually progress from one stage to the other. We've got another good question that's come through here. This question's from Michael. And the question is, how easy is it to enable mobility with the massive variation in devices and device sizes?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Michael. Yeah, it's definitely a fragmented market out there. There's literally hundreds and hundreds of handsets of different shapes and sizes. So when you come to looking at how to mobilize your site, it's really about, I guess, understanding the lowest common denominator. So when it comes to mobiles, just consider the most compact screen. Start with that. So what is the most essential information I need to get onto the most compact screen, and then slowly build out from there. So when you're on a bigger device like a tablet, for instance, you may want to be looking at having a slightly different layout or variation there, where you just put a little bit more content on the screen because you can. You've got more real estate. And then, of course, when you're looking at desktops, you have the luxury of providing even more content on the screen. So I guess the easiest thing to do is start with the lowest common denominator, the smallest screen, and decide what is that most key piece of information you want to get across on the smallest screen possible.
Some good points there, Tim. Thanks for answering that question there. There's quite a few questions coming in. Feel free to keep asking questions. We'll try to get to maybe one or two more. We are close on time over here. So another question we've got here from Scott, and that question is, can any of the advice be applied to intranet? Because a lot of today's content was related to external websites. I'll let Brian and Tim jump in, but just from my perspective, it definitely can, and I think Tim and Brian will maybe give you an idea of which elements can be. The webinar today was definitely Kickstart Your Website focused. We will be running one from an intranet-focused perspective as well. But even the content today, there's a lot of similarities, and there are some that can be. So I'll let Brian and Tim maybe mention a couple.
Yeah, when it comes to an intranet or even an extranet, there's definitely room for growth, and certain things that we've touched on today can definitely apply. A mobile strategy, a lot of my clients nowadays are actually moving to a mobile device for their intranet. And in the beginning, I'd probably turn around and go, well, who's going to be able to connect to it? But it seems that more and more companies are getting a VPN connection on their mobile device so that people can access the internal networks. And that's, again, you're holding your mobile phone all day, every minute of the day. I know I go home and get shouted at for working at the minute I walk through the front door. But the truth is, that's how we all become. The information's in the palm of our hand, so why not just carry on working? Now, having that VPN connection will allow us to log into our intranet. Perhaps you've got an extranet that you can access from the outside world. If that is the case, then you need to look at a mobile strategy for your end users. Your end users being your staff members who are accessing your intranet. Content's going to be changing all the time on an intranet. There's going to be new policies, new information, perhaps a new project that's come on that needs to be brought across on your intranet. And these things, there's always going to be building and growing. And yes, looking at your content, perhaps not necessarily worrying what the SEO effect may have on it, but thinking about what the structure would be for your internal users that will be accessing the site.
Yeah, and just to add to that around content and navigation, navigation is